Welcome to Third Chances, a talk show where we like to hear from people who devoted their life to health, fitness and wellness. Medical professionals, health coaches and all the others who help us every day to cure our body, mind or soul. Those who always look for more natural, holistic ways to help even more people to live a happier and healthier life. Those who don't like to give up easily and settle on you or themselves. It is never too late or too soon. I always believe that every one of us deserves not just a second chance, but as many as we need. I'm Vera, your host. Who better than a master of reinvention with an accent to guide you through it, right? Just like they say, you are not a tree, so move. And God knows I have done just that in my own life many times. If you are not completely happy with the direction your life is going, this show may help you get the courage to change what is needed, find a new path and take charge. So come on over, pour yourself a glass of wine and spend some time with us. Let's laugh and cry together and get inspired by people just like you and me who overcame their own doubts and took a leap of faith to reinvent their life on their own terms. I hope and pray that we help you on that journey. And if you feel so compelled and inspired, please let us know. Don't be shy. Who knows? You may just be our next featured guest with another inspiring success story. So here we go. So hello, and welcome to our today's podcast, the episode of Third Chances, when we speak with interesting human beings that change their life for better. And let me tell you, today's guest is very special one. Berta Medina Garcia is surely a rare breed of human being. She's an adventurist, external optimist, and outspoken positive influence on anyone she meets. One of the most generous people I ever met, and I'm so blessed to have her in my life and being able to call her my friend. Welcome, Berta.
Thank you, Vera. So happy to be here. I'm so excited.
I am excited too. And please bear with me because this lady deserves all the acknowledgement of her many accomplishments. Here is just a little bit of her long list of professional credentials that I put together, and I better read it because I don't want to mess it up. So Berta founded A Dreamers Succeed to help others who are looking for growth to shift their perspective, the way they view themselves, and break limits of what they think they are capable of, which applies to life, business, and teams in modern organizations that want to bring the best out of people. Adventure coaching is just that, challenging yourself to be the best you can. And Berta does it by her own example, whether it is her passion for serving and philanthropy, love for Kenya, and a mission she accomplished there that it's hard to imagine for most human beings that we call normal, or her skydiving, or a decision to get a license for piloting. There's nothing impossible to her. Berta inspires by her positive spirit and accountability she has for herself and for all those around her. She also brings her own 30 years of experience as an entrepreneur to the table. So on top of all this, she's a captivating keynote speaker, an author of multiple books, certified professional coach and go-giver speaker, creator of various programs, workshops, retreats, seminars, helping people realize their goals, find new paths to fulfillment, and motivate those who need a little push to change their view for life for the better. We can speak about your accomplishments the whole day, Berta, but that's just one part of you. And I believe we will get to know you much better by understanding what's important to you. We met a few years back when I heard you speak on a video, and your stand resonated so strongly with my own values that I was basically stalking you ever since until we scheduled lunch together. And once we met in person, I felt like we were lifelong friends. That's the way you make people feel. So welcome to our show. It's an honor to have you here today. I know how busy you are, and it means a lot you made time in your schedule for our podcast. Where in the world are you right now?
right now. And thank you for those beautiful words. I think you overdid it, so I'm gonna, let your audience
Impossible.
know. I think she overdid it a little bit. Today I am in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. It's raining, but usually it's just beautiful here. We've had some really nice weather this fall and beautiful trees. So yeah, today I always start with, well, today, and that's where I am today.
Yeah, you remind me of those travelers that go around the world and just change people on the way as a side effect. You know, I hope you don't mind to go a little back in your memory lane. I was really attracted to your life story. You came from Cuba, and I would like to know how was it, if you remember, how was it to adapt to the American life when
Well,
you
what's
first
interesting
came?
is that I was actually born in Miami. My mom and grandparents migrated in 1965. So I was
Okay.
born 2 years later, was blessed by the grace of God to be born in arguably the greatest country in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we did grow up. It was so fresh for our family, the having to leave and being exiled, that we grew up as if we had our lives in two different places, on the
Mm-hmm.
island of Cuba and in Miami, which was, my grandfather was always so grateful for the welcoming arms of this country, allowing him to work, despite the fact that he was already retired in Cuba and came here
Yeah.
and had to help raise, four fatherless, absent fathered children. We weren't fatherless; we were just absent father. So it was very interesting because we grew up in a very traditional Cuban home. Multi-generational. We grew up in a three-generation home. It was my grandparents, my mom, my aunt, and then myself. I'm an only child, but I was blessed to grow up with three cousins in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost as if we lived through the stories and through the freshness of everything, the trauma, if you will, of having to just leave everything behind and coming to a new country where you didn't speak the language, where you didn't really know people, where the infrastructure wasn't really there yet to be accommodating to that type of migration at the
Yeah.
time. But again, the resilience of this country mixed with the work ethic of the Cubans that were coming in made the transition really tolerable and really a fertile ground for growth and opportunity, and knowing that, if you're here, you can accomplish anything. But still, knowing very deep rooted the stories of, imagine building your entire life and having everything set up, and then I'll use my grandfather as an example, at 60, having to get up and leave everything
Yeah.
behind, start in a new country. So we live that. I mean, still today, I'm three generations in, right? I'm first generation American, my kids, and then my granddaughter. um and it's very important for us to make sure that they are very aware of the story and how it happened,
Oh, for sure.
because forgetting is a creates a danger of repetition, right? We're
If
seeing.
yeah, exactly. If we don't learn from our own history, we are
Yes,
deemed to
yes,
repeat it.
yes.
There was
Amen.
it's interesting you mentioned you have a strong woman in your life, and I heard you talking about it repeatedly. But also an inspiring grandfather. So, who would you think influenced you the most, and what way?
I would say both of my grandparents were probably the strongest influence on me. I think my grandfather brought with him this tremendous sense of work ethic and responsibility and love for country and patriotism. I always talk about how he was the most patriotic American I've ever known, and
Yeah,
he never even got to this country till he was 60. So he instilled a lot of that. And then my grandmother was the other side of the coin, the compassion, the caring, the total belief in that, anything was possible, because look at, what happened to them and what they were able to accomplish.
yeah,
And it was as if their dreams were now living inside of our futures. right? And I think that at least for the four of us who grew up with my grandparents, that were blessed to grow up with my grandparents, we've all probably really taken that to heart. We've all subscribed to the ethics um, of strong work ethic, and again, love of country and patriotism. But we've all, you know, been in business for ourselves for many years. You know, my grandfather made sure we were all college and married before he retired at the age of 82.
That's
But
amazing.
yeah, but you know, he, you know, we're proud sort of to carry that torch, and we feel a sense of responsibility, you know, always. You know, my grandfather's been gone for 17 years, but my grandmother's been gone, who was, you know, like my mother. And again, my mom very strong, my aunt very, you know, both of my aunts very strong. We come from a long line of very strong women,
Yeah.
which I feel it's a huge blessing to have that in my bloodline. But again, I've always had, despite the fact that my grandma has been gone for 37 years, this sense of responsibility, like, listen, she's watching, what would she think about this, you know?
For sure.
And how would I be showing up for her if I did this versus this?
Yeah.
So it's really been a great, I don't want to say boundaries, right? Boundaries to stay within the lines while staying as far outside of the line as you possibly could. You know, my grandmother, you know, despite the fact that she died fairly young in today's, you know, numbers, she was
Mhm.
70, but she would have totally been a pilot. You know, she loved traveling, she loved the snow, she was on a plane or a train, and took me everywhere she went,
Yeah.
thank God, until I started school. So it's just, you know, honoring those, the legacies of those that came before us, and doing more with what they instilled in us
It's like the hunger
than
for
we were
life.
expected. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
There was one thing, if I may ask you, and if you don't want to talk about it, that's okay, but I would love to touch on it because I heard you once saying the story how you at some point of your childhood realized that your father, who stayed behind in Cuba, turned out to be something entirely different than what you thought the entire time he was.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
how does that affect a mind of child when
yeah.
you kind of, make your father a hero in your story?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a great question, Vera, and I love it. And what's funny is that I never talked about or shared that story until after my mom passed. Um, I know that she didn't know the story of how that realization came to be.
Hmm.
And I think it would have, it even though she knew, obviously, but I think it would have broken her heart to know
Yeah.
the way that it was exposed to me. So my father was in the US, and he lived in Miami. And you know, when my mom became pregnant, he went back to Cuba when she was 5 months pregnant. So of course, I, you know, come into this world, I don't know who he is other than pictures and phone
Right.
calls, which were very, you know, difficult to achieve at the time. And I remember that when I was old enough to realize what would happen, they would tell me that he went back to Cuba when my mom was pregnant because his mom got sick and he had to go. And then when he went back, he was captured as a political prisoner and he was in prison, whatever. So you can
Right.
imagine, you know, the kids in school, you're 5, 6 years old, and the kids are like, well, where's your father? You know, why don't you have a father?
Yeah.
And what is it? It was such a weird thing right back then. And it was like this whole explanation, you know, a political prisoner is such a you know, badge of honor for exiled
Yeah.
Cubans,
And
right?
totally credible for
Right,
that time.
exactly.
Yeah.
But still, it's prison. You know, how does a child make, you know, concessions with that?
Hmm.
And then, you know, fast forward, when I was 11, they had opened the flights, you know, you could go back in the late 70s. And at 11, I flew to Cuba to meet him.
Hmm.
And you know, he's working construction, he's got a nice house, and I had siblings that I didn't know about from previous marriages of his. And all this was very, I went from this life of thinking I'm the only child in my family to now I have these three siblings. Oh my God, I'm like, whatever.
Wow.
But, this is pretty good for a guy who was in prison. He's got a nice house, a nice job, whatever.
Right.
I'm trying to make sense with
Yeah, you
with
are
my little old
11.
brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
11. And I'm thinking, any day now, my mother's going to just pick up and say, hey, listen, we're moving to Cuba because I don't want you to be away from your father, whatever. It was so, and my mom worked so hard. She was, she worked, she was a literature teacher in Cuba. That's what she majored in. And then she comes to this country, has to make ends meet. And she was working. Thank God it was a really good company, but doing, factory work. It ended up being bought out by Johnson and Johnson. But just, a lot of times she was on 13 days and 1 day off, and 13 days and 1 day off. So it was just hard. Um, so she missed out on a lot of the things that I was very, very determined to do with my children. You know how we learn from our parents.
Yeah.
So when I'm 16, just before my 17th birthday, my mom wants to go back to visit my father. And my grandmother at this time was sick already. And my mother said, we're going. And my grandmother said, hey, I mean, she had been in bed for a year. She said, hey, I'm going too. And I'm like, this is weird. She's been in bed for a year, and now all of a sudden, no, I want to see my sister. And she came with us. It was a difficult trip for her.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got there, which was weird because it didn't make sense to me that why, if a father has never met his daughter, doesn't he come pick her up at the airport, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's weird,
Yeah.
right? um so my great aunt picks us up, we go to her house, and he picks just me up, which I thought was weird. Takes me to a park, no, I mean, I'm 16, it's not like I need ice cream or whatever, but we're sitting at the park, and you know and he tells me, this is, and imagine, Vera, this is me right before senior year,
Yeah.
17 years old. Reagan is president. I am at the height of being, and growing up with a grandfather like I had, at the height of being so blessed and grateful for being born in this country. The optimism was at an all-time high with what it meant to be an American and American exceptionalism.
Right.
And he sits me down and he says, my greatest shame of my life is that I have an American daughter. I'm just sitting there like, what is happening right now? And he said, listen, I am very well connected. I didn't come back for your grandmother. I came back because I was fighting for the revolution. And I want you to know that I know everybody in government. And if you are willing to stay here, I can make it happen. And I'm thinking, Vera, this is day one, right? Those are 8-day
Yeah.
trips to Cuba, whatever.
Different
And
story for life,
listen,
for political
and
prisoner, right?
first of all, I'm thinking, number one, why have they been lying to me for all these years? Number two, do they even know?
Hmm.
And then number three was, how the fuck do I get off this island in 8 days without him trying to pull some shit because I'm a minor?
Yeah.
And he might brainwash my mother into leaving me. And then it hit me why my grandmother insisted on going despite the fact that
Right.
she was really sick. Because she thought he might convince her, but he knows he's not going to get past me, right?
Yeah.
So it just brought on this whole thing of, at 11 everything was different. Could that have set some trust issues, back then? But
Yeah.
then at 16 everything was nauseatingly different. Okay, it was the only way I
And
can
you
describe
also
it.
form your own opinion by that time.
Yes,
So you were strong in
exactly.
your values.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I knew what I knew, but I also knew that legally there was a chance. There was a chance that he could pull this off, and there was a chance.
Yeah,
And then
that's
he
right.
he sort of blackmailed me that he had this girlfriend, and but my mother didn't know, but that if I stayed, he promised that he would stay with my mom. And he goes, and I know that all you want is for your mother to be happy, and the only thing that's going to make her happy is if she's with me.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, motherfucker, bro, what in the world is happening right now? So I'm super focused. I go back because I left my bags and everything, and I lost it. Like, I didn't lose it in front of him because I was determined not to let him know that anything that he was saying was coming through. I mean, I didn't want to
That was
I didn't want
smart.
to give him I didn't want to give him anything. At that
Mhm.
time, I said, and this sounds really bad, Vera, because I know that we have to honor our parents, But I said, this is a funeral that I will never have to come back for because this man is dead to me.
Yeah.
It was that bad. So I go back, and when I see my grandmother, I just lost it. I lost it. So my mother knew what had happened, number one, and my grandmother figured what would happen, what had happened. And she just said to me, go, well, because I didn't want to go. I had 7 days then to be with him and his family, whatever. And I just didn't want to go. And my grandmother said, you go, you're going to be good. Don't you worry about anything. I got you. You go. Everything's going to be fine.
Hmm.
And I did. And we spent, 7 days together, and the family would come over and he would cook. And, if we went out to somewhere where he worked, he would make me, wear different clothes because my clothes look too American, whatever.
Yeah.
And I was just like numb, Vera. I was numb for those 7 days, just trying to, looking over my shoulder, making sure that that if I had to run, I knew where I was going to run.
Yeah.
I mean,
Was
that's
it the
so bad.
last time you saw him?
It was the last time I saw him. So when I got, years later, when I got married, it was already a lot more fluid for Cubans to be able to come with a
Mhm.
visa for 3 months or whatever. And there was a lot of talk around the possibility of maybe him coming and walking me down the aisle. And he just didn't want to set foot on American soil. I mean,
Good.
he just didn't want to, which is, listen, I respect that. I think if he was as passionate about his political views as I am, I don't have to agree with him, but I have to respect that side of
Yeah.
him. So it took me a long time to heal the fact that that was just his truth and it had nothing to do with me. And the fact that he was a bully about it was just, that's all he knew. And
That
it's okay.
actually probably helped you to make that decision to distance yourself from him.
Yeah. Yeah. And it
Mm.
was, and again, it's a story that I never shared, because I think, like I said, I don't know that my mom would have wanted to hear that.
Mm.
Um, so I started that's the first chapter I wrote for my next book, which is called Champagne and Balls of Steel. But I wrote that chapter 5 years ago.
Wow.
And people would ask me, where is your next book? And I would say, I can't publish it until my mother's dead. And I wanted my mother to live to be 100. So I knew I would be up there, right? But it was okay. I was super determined to protect her from that.
Oh.
And then I lost my mom, in 2019, and it still hurts, but it was very freeing to be able to have the conversation. And I don't give a heck, I don't care who hears it. And it's my story, and
Yeah.
I get to share it, and I get to heal from it, and I can't heal from it if I don't share it.
That's
So
true.
it's been he has since, passed. He passed long before my mom did. um and it was crazy for me because I would say, when people would say, what about your dad? Where's your dad? And I would say, oh, he's dead. It's so much easier for me to
Yeah.
just, for that to be the explanation, and that to say, well, he was here, but then he went back to Cuba, and then, and leaving all the other stuff out. But which is sad because, how does saying someone's dead become easier than speaking their life?
Yeah.
But it is what it is, girl. But thank you for asking. It's not something I talk about a lot, but
It is
but
very interesting part of your story because at 16 to be as determined and knowing who you are and who you don't want to compromise to be, it's pretty strong to me. I
yeah.
wasn't so sure about myself at 16 for sure.
Yeah, and I think Vera, what's happened, and it's interesting that you say that. I think what happened was that for the first time I felt I'm on my own,
Yeah.
because there's always this illusion of the father, right? Even if he's not there, he's absent, but it's like your protector. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'm thinking, listen, I'm on my own here. My mom, I'm gonna have to take care of my mom because she deserves to be taken care of, and I'm gonna have to do it because he's not even there for her. She doesn't know it, but he's not
Yeah.
there for her.
Yeah.
So it just brought on this whole sense of um of me stepping into, maybe earlier than I should have, but stepping into a place of, if it's me against the world, not in a bad way, not in a mad way, but in a very reassuring, listen, I can do this. I've been without him for 16 years. This is not going to be
Yeah.
anything.
And not only for yourself, but for people around you, for your own family, you stood up.
Yeah. Crazy
Well,
stuff.
well, despite all this, you went through and did have a successful career in something completely different than what you do today.
Yes.
And so what happened? There was a moment in your life when you decided that it can't go on like that, and you did the craziest turnaround, 150% or
Yeah.
how it
Yeah.
could be called, to completely change your life around, and went back to school.
Yep. Yep.
Tell us
Yeah. It
about that.
was, yeah, it was interesting, Vera, because I'd been in title real estate on the title side for 28 years. The kids were already grown, and when my son actually graduated high school, I started my own title company. I said, okay,
Mhm.
now it's my turn. Before I had worked, I had a title servicing company where I would service other title companies. Um, and built a great business, loved every minute of it. Never thought I would quit title because I loved it. I knew I would die doing title. And then one of my daughter's best friends had a really bad breakup. She would come to our house every day, and she would, we would try to console her, and she
Yeah.
would say, Beta, you should be a coach. And I'm like, oh, people call me that all the time, whatever. And she said, no, like, you should really be a coach. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she goes like, coaching, you can get certified. That's like a thing. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? So I enrolled, looked into it. 2 weeks later, I'm enrolled at the University of Miami professional coaching program. But at the time, I was training for a mission trip that I received a spot to go on
Yeah.
the January before. And preparing for that mission trip, it was everything I ever wanted. I wanted to volunteer. I wanted to work with Maasai women and children. I wanted to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I wanted to do all this stuff. But again, I took the coaching just out of curiosity. It was the most expensive curiosity I've ever had. But I just wanted to know what it was like,
Yeah.
never expecting to lead title. I just thought it might make me a better human, better able to serve, better able to. So when I go on the mission trip, I spent 3 weeks in Kenya and Tanzania, and there was so much to be done, Vera. There were so many children, so many families. These Maasai people, and the people of Kenya and Africa in general. I've been to Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Kenya. I'll be in Zimbabwe come February, but I just fell in love with the people. I mean,
Mhm.
they're the most giving, the most hospitable people. You walk into these mud huts and there's nothing there, like not even a little frame, a little lamp, but
Right.
they are literally, Vera, taking the beads off from around their neck and gifting you with something. They just want to be able to give you something.
Yeah.
And so when I came back from that trip, um, I told my husband and my kids and my mom, I said, listen, I'm retiring from title. This is my life. There's so much to be done. I can't do it, sitting in an office 16 hours a day. Even though when I built my company, I would tell my IT guy, who was my cousin, I would say, whatever you have to build, I don't care how much it costs. I want to be able to do it from Africa. And I had never even gone to Africa, right? This was just on my vision board in my mind since I was a kid. And so I had that flexibility, except when I was on the mountain that we were there for 7 days, we had no communication. So I said that, and they thought I had lost my mind. They thought I had fallen on the mountain and hit my head. And I got back October 4th, and December 31st, I was retired from my company. I gave away my Miami business to these great people that I had worked with for years, and my Orlando business to one of the girls that did a lot of my closings, who was in a situation where I knew it was going to really benefit her. Offers to sell it. I didn't want to sell it. I didn't want to leave. I just wanted a clean cut. And
Wow.
God had been very generous with me, so I figured it's time to pay that forward and never look back, Vera.
Yeah. Well,
Coach,
you
started
skipped
coaching.
very, very elegantly around the biggest point, that was climbing Kilimanjaro for somebody who has never climbed a mountain before.
Yes, yes. I was
That's insane enough.
it was, yeah, it was a little bit insane, but you know what, I was so determined, and part of the mission was we would sponsor a Maasai child. My little boy's name was Sipao. He was 5 years old at the time. And we had to raise, we had to pay our $6,000 for the trip and then raise $6,000. and that would guarantee that it would get these 5-year-old children their medical, nutritional, and educational needs met until they graduated their version of high school. And these are Maasai children who are living in very remote, poor villages, and without an education, it's very hard for them to thrive, especially that in Kenya the schools are public but they're not free.
Yeah.
So if you don't have the means, you can't. I mean, you got to you food, or you're going to go to school. So a lot of parents don't have the option to do that unless they're, sponsored. So that's where each of us came in. There were 23 climbers on this mission, and we each had our child who we were climbing for. But when I get the invitation, I'm 40. I turned 47 right before I left. Never climbed the mountain in my life. Born and raised in Miami. We don't have mountains or hills in Miami. And I thought, I can probably do this. They're giving us 7 days to get to the summit. It's little by little. Listen,
You're
I
probably the
trained.
only person who thinks he can do it.
No, I walked thousands. I think I put 2,000 miles on my Fitbit between January and when we left in September. I'd
But
gone to
flat.
a few, yeah, gone to a few mountains just to see what it was like. But you're not, day one where it's, the Kilimanjaro, the base of Kilimanjaro is actually like a rainforest. Okay. And you start seeing different topographies and ways of seeing the mountain as you go up. But even that first day, I'm looking at myself and I'm thinking, who the hell told me
Yeah.
to come here? At this age, I'm not in the best shape, but you know what, Vera? We each had a picture of our child hanging from a clip on our backpacks.
Yeah.
So whoever was walking behind you could see the picture of the child of the person in front of them. And I swear, Vera, if it hadn't been for that and the faith that I knew God picked me for this mission, picked me for Sipao, I guarantee you I was not in shape. I was not,
Yeah.
I was not supposed to. And but that got me there. I was just so determined. And I had told my family, listen, I am gonna summit or die trying. My wish is to be cremated and my ashes spread in the Masai Mara or on Kili. But so leave me there. Let me rot on the mountain. Don't even
The
come get me
optimist
because
in
that's
you.
so expensive. Yes, exactly. I'm good. I'm gonna summit or die trying. And I didn't bring a plan B, so it was either really it was summit or die.
I think if I remember correctly, there was a moment of weakness towards the end when you really couldn't do it anymore, and something happened that pushed you the last moment to make it. Do you remember?
Yeah, that was on a different mountain, but I think on this
Oh, it
on this
was.
particular mountain, everything and God's timing is so perfect. And these guides that do this, okay, and our lead guide had already summited Kili over 250 times. So the my guide, his name was Masu, and he just knew he could read me like a book, and he just knew when it was time to come in, when it was time to do something. And we're getting to there's a point where when you reach that point, you're only an hour away from the summit. Okay.
Mhm.
And he makes me sit down, and I hadn't had Coke since like I was pregnant with my son. Okay. Or before I was pregnant with my son, and they had all hidden a Coke in our backpack. So it was 0 degrees when we got up, at 1 in the morning to summit. So by the time that we get up there, these Cokes are like freezing cold.
Mhm.
And he makes me sit down. He says, just for 2 minutes, and he brings this Coke out, and he says, drink it. And I said, listen, I don't really drink Coke. He goes, you're gonna drink Coke today. Listen, it was the best, most delicious Coke I had ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And you know what he did? He began to sing. He began to sing, and I just thought, I cannot let this man down who has taken me this far. Okay. And every day we would all start out as a group, and then eventually there would be a front group, there would be a middle group, and there would be 2 or 3 people in the back. So I would always start off, and I would look at whoever was walking all the way in the back, and I would say, today I'm going to walk with this person because I want to go as slow as possible. Pole pole is what they call it, slow pace. That's
Mhm.
the only way really to succeed. on an adventure like that. And and then it became not only about Cibao, but I gotta get there to Masu. Look at how close we are. I can't quit now.
Yeah.
So it was it's very interesting how our minds can kick things into a whole other level when the attitude is right. And our lead guide said the day before we left, he said, your success on this mountain is going to be 90% attitude and 10% aptitude. I don't care if you're in shape. I don't care if you can do it. We, brought blind people up here. Masu's the oldest person Masu had taken, and I asked him, was 84 years old. I'm like, how freaking embarrassing if I don't make it.
Yeah.
So, so it's all these little things that God is constantly whispering to us as encouragement, or as, you know, whispers of Him telling us, listen, I know you can do this. Let's go. And then
Yeah.
He'll bring somebody in, or bring something in, or something will enter your mind that will take you to that next little leg. So yeah.
Isn't this interesting what you just said, that you wanted to go your slow pace to get there? And when you transform it to the coaching and the changes people seek to make in their life, and they seek for the quickest possible shortcut to overcome all the pain and pain of change to get there as soon
Yes.
as possible. Isn't it fantastic?
Yeah. Really, really interesting. And
Yeah.
it really is just, and I just lost a dear friend. I think I was telling you the other day, Vera.
Yeah.
And the realization, the greatest gift from what happened to him at the end, was a realization for me that our future is nothing more than an accumulation of the habits and the decisions that we make today.
Yeah.
All those little things, I don't care how minute or how minuscule, they're going to add up eventually. So it could be really good, or it could be really bad.
That's
but
right.
but
Yeah.
it's but the slowing down, and just looking at what we're doing and what we're being consistent about, is, like you said, I'm glad that it stood out to you, because super, super important.
Yeah. Berta, if when you spoke about all these things you accomplished, and it's just by any standard, that's nothing that normal human being thinks about, to, oh, let's go climb Kilimanjaro, or let's go and get the pilot license, or things like skydiving. It may be funny questions for you, but is there some like biggest fear that you faced and overcame?
I think what happens, Vera, and the reason that I do these things, I don't do them because I'm not afraid of them.
I
I'm
know
just
that. Yeah.
yeah, I'm afraid of being so afraid that I will stop trying things. So I think if there's one thing that I really fear, is fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
The giving into the fear, because our fears cease to exist the minute you're only scared until you jump off the plane, right? You're only scared until your instructor gets out of the plane and says, okay, now you gotta take off and land on your own. You're
Yeah.
you're only scared until you dare to make that next step. So I think the scariest thing for me is always going to be, um am I ever going to get so scared that I won't do something? and
Yeah.
and I pray to God every day that that never happens. I think it helps a lot that I'm not afraid of dying. And I think what happens is, I want to live to be 100. Let me preface this whole conversation with that. But if I go today, I go happy, because I've lived two lifetimes in my 55 years. Okay. So I think not being afraid of dying gives you an edge in being afraid, being uh, willing and courageous enough to try new things. That Because it's okay, if I go, I go. And what a hell of a way to go. Listen, I'd rather go. And they say, listen, she was jumping out of a plane and the parachute didn't open. Then,
Oh,
she was stuck at the office trying to move the mouse, and she had a heart attack, or, not belittling, whatever. But I think that helps. That helps.
that helps. And it's also crazy inspiring for people around you to strive to being their best. And I'm sure it shows up in the coaching as well, when you have a client that is not so sure that they can achieve things that they set to achieve. I'm sure it makes big role in the way you work with them.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. I just have very high expectations of people, and I have yet to be let down. So, because I see what they're capable of, and you know that, Vera, because you're a coach as well. You see that masterpiece walking in way before they even get to the door, right? And all we have to do is bring it out
Yeah.
and help them see it. So it's fun. We get to do this for a living.
Yeah. So what would you say are the three strongest values for you to live by?
I think the three strongest values would be lead with generosity. I think in everything that we do, we have to lead with generosity. Um, I think knowing that we're a masterpiece. God don't make no junk, sort of thing. And God put us here for a reason. And if we look hard enough, we'll eventually figure it out. And I think it's just, for me, I am almost optimistic to a fault. I don't know how not to be optimistic, even in situations that may seem like you shouldn't be. But I think being an eternal optimist really, really helps. Really helps.
Yeah,
Because I can see the beauty in everything, and I can see
that's
the reason.
important. Yes, that's for sure. It is important. Yeah. So when people work with you, what can they expect?
Well, they expect, and I tell them at every, interview, and you know how it is, Vera. It's not so much that they're interviewing us. We want to make sure that we're interviewing them. For any coaches out there, um, you know, work with people that set your soul on fire, or
Mm.
don't work with them at all. Okay. Because if you're not inspired by those conversations and what's possible for them, it's gonna suck,
You will
right?
be burning yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So I always preface with, um I don't care if I'm talking to a brand new coach who's just looking for structure in their, and how to set up a business, a coaching business that's viable and can, you know be rewarding for them. Or if I'm talking to the CEO of a major corporation, I tell them I am an asshole as a coach, because I am going to so believe in what you're trying to accomplish if I take you on as a client, that I'm not going to let up until we're done. So some days it's great, right? If they're doing what they're they're staying accountable, if they're doing
Yeah.
what they promise they're going to do, it's great. Sometimes it's not so great, and the f bombs are flowing. But you know what? Nobody goes to coaching if they just want to be, hey, you're doing great, good job,
Pampered.
good,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and if you do, it's great. I'm not your coach.
It
But
is
if
the
you don't
hardest
mind,
thing to actually
yeah,
listen to,
yeah,
being
yeah,
shown who you really are,
yes.
because deep down you know it, but it's hard to
Yeah.
hear it from somebody
And
else.
sometimes it needs, and you know what? People really, really appreciate when we tell them what they need to hear
Yeah.
and tell them what nobody's willing to tell them. I don't have one client who has not become a friend.
Yeah.
I went on my mission trip last year was to Kenya, and I took ex clients. We had a great time. And you know what? They become my family because I love them enough to tell them what they want to hear. And there are days when they hate my guts. And listen, that's okay.
For
That's
sure.
that's that's what you're paying for. So it's just a trip, and I've met some amazing people and see people do brilliant things that they never could have imagined that they would do. But it
Because
was in them, because they had the seed of that dream. It wouldn't be planted there if God hadn't already given them everything they needed to achieve them. It's what I believe.
it's
So
funny you said that's what they are paying me for, because it just reminded me of one story. One of my first clients that I got, and when we were making big progress with her, but then every time she comes back to have another session, and she was back where she was before, and I realized there is issue in the family that we need to address. So we met with her husband, and obviously we made progress with her, but he wasn't up to speed, so to say. So he had a lot of stuff to get out of himself, before we can do any kind of coaching. And at one point he got so frustrated because I didn't let him to be with his story, that he told me, well, you got to do what you paid to do. And I'm like, nothing will happen unless you change what you need to change. This is, you're not paying me to change your life. Nobody can change it for you. And it was so hard for me because I was really new in this, and I just randomly came up with the story about my mom and how I overcame my own issues with her. And miraculously it fit the situation, because suddenly he got it, the light bulb went on, and he was like, I got it, I'm in control of my own emotions and feelings. Got it. Absolutely. Got it. And it was like the big stone fell off her chest, because that's what she was overcoming every single time when she came back home. Lifted high and then got back to where she was before. So it's a big deal. And it's probably one of the biggest misconceptions people have about coaching, that they believe that the coach will make them do what they don't want to do, but they have to find it in themselves to do it.
It's making them want to do what they don't want to do.
Or
making them know, encouraging them. And I think it's beautiful the way that you did that, because what happens, Vera, if you had not gotten curious that something might, if you were listening so well to her that you determined that there was something going on.
There was something underneath that wasn't spoken, and it was the least probable link, because she kept telling me and her daughter that her husband was the best person in the world, and he was fabulous human being, but unintentionally he was bringing her back down where she was before. And it's just the dynamic was there the moment I walk in a house. And it just and I wasn't sure what will come out of it. And there was 1, 2 or 3 hour session that I can feel sweat running down my back, because I couldn't get up and walk away. I have to finish the job. He was so close to get it, and he did. And I was so proud. I was really proud. It was one of the most amazing transformations for me as a coach, to see somebody really, from the almost combative attitude towards me, being able to take charge of their own thoughts and realize that it's somewhere else than what he was looking for. It was spectacular.
And that's beautiful. And that's a beautiful story, Vera. I didn't know. And what's crazy, that it's your commitment. And that's the difference between, some people have their first experience with a coach that's not really in it for the right reason. People get into coaching for money. And I'm like, listen, you're never going to make money selling coaching. Nobody buys coaching.
Exactly.
They're buying the dream, and they're buying the results that you can bring them. But the difference between a coach who's just there, hey, listen, okay, 45 minutes are up. What are you going to work on next week? And what do you want to, that do it the very traditional, whatever. I've never been good at that. So my sessions are like that. They're 2-3 hour sessions. I tell people, bring time. That's all you got. That's all I got. All I can tell you is bring time. Versus the coach like you that was so committed to the breakthrough for your client, that she was willing to get, because she had already proven to you that she was doing the work.
It was disheartening, exactly, because she was making such a progress.
But you could have just as easily, not you, because I know how you are, but any other coach might have just not gone there. They don't want to go deep. They just want to, let's keep it surface. And listen, we got to go deep, and we got to get down and dirty. That's, or if not, we're not serving.
And it's for anybody, change isn't easy, as you know. It's Absolutely. Not like we are some superhuman beings that will change our ways on demand. It just doesn't work like that.
That's
awesome. What do you do when people have a hard time to change their habits, change their ways?
You know what? I always start with the why, Vera. I go back to, and that's a lot of the discovery that I do with my clients is around the why, because I know that I can always bridge the gaps if I can tie them back to the why, if they have a very strong why. Okay. And listen, and I only know that because that was me. That's how things work for me. I've always been very why driven. I've always been very why motivated. So I know that. And listen, Vera, we know people are like, oh, are you? I just had breakfast with a client this morning, and she said, what do you do? Are you always like super motivated? And I go, listen, some days suck ass. And I'm very, you know me, Vera. I say it like it is, and I'm very transparent, and I'm very authentic with people. And I'm like, listen, I'm having a low V day. I call it low V. It's low vibration day. It just is what it is. So when I'm having a low V day, I have enough of a routine already set up that I can go into robot mode, right?
Yeah.
If today I'm having a low V mode and I'm not motivated to do things, and listen, I'm very graceful with myself. I want to encourage everyone out there to extend grace to themselves. I schedule my spontaneity, because if you see my calendar, it's like crazy, but I schedule even the spontaneity because I want to make sure that I have room, not so much for balance in my life, but for harmony in my life.
Yeah, because
And
the last thing we think about is ourselves, and that needs to
exactly,
be scheduled, like you said.
exactly. So I don't keep score like, oh, this many hours of this and this many hours of this. I have created a business that gels so well with the life that I want to live that I can't tell when one starts and one ends. I don't know where the where the work ends and then the play begins. They're just very, very interconnected. And
That's
I
my
it
dream to
wasn't
achieve.
yeah, it wasn't instant, but we have to be intentional about that. If not, it's never going to happen. So what I do is I've established enough of, and because my focus is always on accountability, I've established enough of a routine that this part, and I'm in my RV today in Pigeon Forge. So the fridge of the RV has a little light. So when you're hooked up to the electricity, the little green light is on that says electric.
Mhm.
But when you disconnect the electricity, automatically the fridge goes to LP. So it's running on the LP gas, so
Mhm.
that the fridge is never not functioning. It's either functioning on, in my case, I'm either functioning on motivation or I'm functioning on robot mode.
Yeah.
But I have the parameters in place so that when this is missing, I'm still getting everything done. I'm still getting to everything in robot mode, if you
There
will,
is no
because
option
I've
for you to
designed.
melt.
There's no, exactly. So I love that. Beautiful. So that I'm never missing a beat. And listen, there are days when I'm disconnected, and my clients will call me or somebody will call me. I don't have anything scheduled, and they'll say, listen, I've been calling you for 3 days. And I'm like, I'm in a mountain. I don't have reception. I was camping, and it's just not a big deal. Of course I'm going to honor if we have a call scheduled, if we have something, but if
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
don't, it's just that it's very fluid, it's very friendly, I love them, and they're used to hearing from me. But I tell people, don't panic, because chances are I'm going to be somewhere where there's no reception,
That's true. Yeah, yeah.
20 times a month.
Especially lately. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
There was
exactly.
there was one question I wanted to ask you, because I know you care deeply about your family. Family is everything to you. And I never met your kids, but if I had the opportunity to ask them, your daughter or son, what would be one word they would describe you by?
Listen, they love saying I'm crazy. My mom, she's
I
crazy.
signed for that.
My mom, she's crazy, but I take it as a good thing.
Yes.
I think we teach our children more by what we do than by what we say. I don't subscribe to the children are gonna do whatever you tell them. That's the biggest crock of shit I've ever heard.
Mhm.
Children are gonna do what you do. So make sure that you're setting a good example. Make sure that you are living your life the best way that you know how, so that if that's what they're gonna mimic, um, they'll be in good shape. And I've always subscribed to that. My kids are freaking, and you will meet them, Vera, but they're amazing. Of course, super biased here, but they're really two of the most. I know that I'm leaving the world better than it was when I got here because of my children.
And
I know
that's
that
not
what
not
I'm leaving.
everybody can say that.
I know what I'm leaving behind is something. They're two spectacular, amazing, generous, giving, um, funny as all hell, human beings that really care about humanity. And that's all we can ask for.
That's a
And now my
result
granddaughter.
of your work as well.
Yeah, yeah. And now my granddaughter's following suit. So it's like, I'm good. I leave happy is what I say.
Yeah. No, you have something to be proud of for sure. That's aside of your professional achievements as a human being. That's, like I said at the introduction, you leave everyone with the feeling that they are lifeys already. I had that feeling. We met and we kick it off right
Oh,
away.
yeah.
And
But I feel like we met and we went to lunch here and we'd had a couple of conversations just on LinkedIn on Messenger, and I'm like, this is my sister from another mister right
that's how
here.
I felt too.
Yeah, it was so cool. I'm very blessed by you and super grateful for you, and I love you. You know that. But I'll
Well,
say it. I'll
that is
say it on the
very
podcast.
mutual, that feeling. And I know that
Yeah.
you make other people feel that way, that you are meaningful to many, many people in the world. And that's really a big badge of honor that if I may say so. Yeah.
Thank you, Vera. And listen, the world is full of amazing, wonderful, beautiful people that don't buy into that lie that they're telling us that people suck and that people are bad and that people are wonderful. And if
Well,
you
if
go
we if
out
we if
expecting
we
people
slip
to,
into complaining, we are becoming one of them. So that's
yeah, yeah.
unfortunate.
And listen, if
Yes.
we go out there expecting for people to be great and to show up for us and to love on us and to appreciate, that's what you're going to get time and time and time again. Now, if you go out expecting for people to stab you in the back and to always be after you, listen,
Yeah.
you're going to get that too. So
Yeah.
just,
You
choose
get what you
wisely.
ask for. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And it's some I just had a bad experience yesterday because I had someone quite important scheduled a call with me, and I was getting ready, and I was all positive and prepared everything, all the questions that I want to ask, and it wasn't related to podcast. And the person didn't show up, didn't
Mm.
answer, didn't follow up, didn't excuse himself, didn't respond to follow-up text, and it was a first introduction. And i was
Wow.
i was really disappointed because I was like, what compelled people to do that? Then in today's technology, they don't even feel obligated to maybe shoot a short text, sorry I can't make it, or I changed my mind, whatever it is. It's just the complete
Yeah.
disrespect of somebody else's time. And I was really devastated, and I was looking back and I was like, what have I done wrong? What happened that brought this to me? Because it was like second phone call in this week. And I so I was looking inside of me for answers and where I could improve. And then I went to my neighbors and grabbed their dog and went for a walk and clear my head.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
how you
That's your therapy.
sometimes get back on track. Yeah.
But Vera, I'm glad that you said that out loud because we have to be careful with ourselves.
Yeah.
And we always try to find the fault in us. And you know what? That's something that until we break that cycle, we're gonna always do it. We cannot at our age, right? Because we're the same age, we cannot default to
Yeah.
blaming ourselves. Okay, so here's because that's happened to me, and you know what? I love that you said devastated. I hope that was an exaggeration, but um, I know that it hurts, and I know that it's just like man, just professional courtesy. This is
Yeah.
this is just so not. There's no excuse for this anymore in this day and age.
Correct.
But two things that I would do in that situation. Number one, I say a prayer for the person. Okay, because I don't know what it is. Maybe their calendar's jammed up. Maybe they lost their phone. Whatever.
Yeah.
A prayer for that person, but that person is those are not my people. Like I say, I take people off of my worry list really really quickly. People are never off my prayer list, but they're off my worry list really quickly.
That's true.
And I do that because I send them off into not my tribe with a prayer, but I have no attachment, Vera.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
because this is
and
this is something that you wouldn't do to anybody. This
no,
doesn't correspond then with your values, and that person would suck the life out of you anyway.
yeah, The good thing is, exactly, the good thing is that you were spared from having to deal with that person, because if that's the way that they're going to be, those are not your people, Vera.
Yeah.
You need to be around people that are like you, high energy, high achieving, super motivated, giving, generous, in service mode. And
That's
there are 7.8 billion people on the planet, man. We don't have
correct.
time to eat shit with anybody that is not
Correct.
on our vibration. I'm sorry that I'm saying so many bad words.
That's okay. We'll beep
listeners.
it.
I apologize.
No, 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 no. I love you the way I love you just the way you are.
so
Listen,
so just
listen.
be mindful of that, but it's
Yeah.
it's his loss,
Yeah.
big time.
And actually, I can probably praise this on the coaching training, that I learned to deal with these things differently than the default is. Like you said, like we blame ourselves or we blame whatever, it's you have always different perspective to look at things. And it doesn't bother me as much. And just like you said, I decided just then that, well, if that's the way you are acting in professional setting, then I don't want to work with you for sure.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. I love
Yeah.
it. Did I tell you your hair looks amazing?
Oh, thank you. I did straighten it up for you because
I love
these
it. I
days,
love you curly though. I love you curly.
me too, and it's much easier in humid. But these days,
Yes.
I wasn't outside yet. I'm inside, so I was like,
Okay.
I can iron it a little and be elegant for Berta.
I love it.
She
I
deserves
love it.
it.
It looks great.
Thank you, thank you. I have two last questions for you. First of all, you have something special coming up in January in Orlando that I want you to invite everybody about. And then I would like you to say goodbye with one piece of wisdom that you would address to people that may be considering working with the coach, don't know what it means, what it involves, don't know if they are ready to change, but they have this deep desire inside of them that something got to change because it's going to eat them alive.
Beautiful.
Not an easy task, but easy for you.
I love it. Good. No, super hard, but it's okay. So January 21st, we do this event called Speaker Connect, and we started doing them back in 2018. We did in Fort Lauderdale, Knoxville, Colorado. Back in Fort Lauderdale, we would cycle them through. And what this was, Vera, came from my need when I started speaking to have video of myself speaking. The only way you can get an engagement if you send in a sizzle reel or a video, but you can't do a video unless you have a speaking engagement. So one day I called my son and I said, listen, I'm just going to rent a theater. I'm going to rent production people. I'm going to bring in videographers. He's a copywriter. I want you to do the abstracts, whatever. And I'm just going to change outfits. It was $5,000. I said, I'm just going to change outfits, record 10 different speeches, and I'll have enough material and content, whatever. So I'm mentioning it to one of my fellow coaches who I was in Toastmasters with. And she said, oh my God, Berta, if you're going to do that, let me pay into it. And that way I'll help you with the cost and I'll record a speech. I don't have a recording. And then another one heard her talking about it. And he's like, what are you talking about? So before I knew it, I had 7 people who needed recording. So what I did was I just divided the cost between all of us so that we, instead of paying $5,000, I think we each paid $900 or something. But we left there with the video professionally edited, with a sizzle reel, with headshots, with the abstract, and we had a real live audience. I would invite people to come in the audience, and that way the videos have the interaction from the audience, which is super necessary when you're dealing with speaking meeting planners. So then at that event, 3 people came up to me and said, are you doing another one? Because I don't have video. And I said, well, let me look into it, whatever. We did the same exact thing, reserved the same theater, did the same thing. We split the costs. And then everybody kept asking us for it. So we did another one in Orlando. We did one in Knoxville, Tennessee. We did one in the last one that we did was in Colorado, March 1st, 2020, right as the pandemic was hitting. And then we weren't able to get venues again. We had a theater scheduled for October that year and we had to cancel. So now so many people have been asking, and my daughter said, listen, you can't not do this again. So we had a wait list. I'm contacting people, but that's going to be super exciting. So we're doing
Yeah.
it at Orlando Shakes in Orlando, at one of the theaters there. Beautiful venue, and we're going to have 7 speakers again. I think we have spots for 2 more, for 2 speakers that haven't signed up yet. And it's just going to be fun, and it's a great event to hear inspiration. They're all speakers in different levels of expertise,
Yeah.
and
What a
you know, the
brilliant
audience really
idea.
wants to.
What a
Yeah,
brilliant
yeah. So
idea.
it's not a money maker, but we're all able to get what we need and
Yeah.
just share the costs of doing something that's really high quality without having to
Love it.
go out of pocket $10,000, you know?
Absolutely love it. Yeah.
Yeah,
See,
yeah.
that's the
Thank you, thank you.
creative part of you that come up with ideas that
The
are
need,
brilliant. Yeah.
the need. There was a need. You know how they say need is the mother of all invention.
Yeah. And so let's
Yeah.
finish
Yeah.
with this one big wisdom from Berta Medina. By the way, is it Berta Garcia Medina, Berta Medina? What is the
No,
name?
now it's back to Berta Medina.
All right.
That's my
Okay.
maiden name.
Okay.
You know the story, girl. Still
In
love the Garcia part, but I'm back to
the
Medina.
master of reinvention in action.
There you go. So I think what I would say, first of all, Vera, super honored that you asked me. I love sharing space with you. I love that you are doing this because I know what a blessing you're going to be to your audience, to the world, to having this content out there. So I'm super stoked, and again,
Especially with the
honored. And
guests like you, because you inspire masses. You are seriously, you are this little person that is warm to anybody who you meet, but then you are bigger than life to everybody else. It's incredible quality of you. It really is. I'm honored to have to know you.
make me blush. But thank
Yeah.
you. You're totally biased, guys. She's totally biased, just like
Yes,
I'm
I
biased.
am.
But I'm super grateful for the space. Super grateful for this space. But I think what I would say to people maybe considering coaching, I think if you have a little inkling of that it's time for a change, that is only gonna grow as time passes. And then what happens is that if you wait 3, 2, 5, 10 years, you're going to wish when you get there that you had started sooner. I'm going to confess that nobody needs coaching. Nobody on this planet needs coaching. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to want to make a change and want coaching, but I have never seen, and I've always invested. I've always had coaches. I have my coach now. But I've always had coaches. I've never been afraid of investing in myself. In that capacity, have always spent, um, more money than I could afford when I would hire the coaches, but have always made a huge jump in my revenue and my, business success because of it at every level, at every level.
Yeah.
So I think that it's that. I think those little, you know, inklings that we have that it's time for a change is just telling, it's an inkling now. It's going to be a blatant scream later on if you don't
You're
do
right.
anything about it, is
And
the only
there's
thing I can tell
probably
you.
not the bigger pain than feeling that you
Yep,
unrealized your potential and you are settling
yep,
for
yep,
something that you feel inside your body that it's not the right path for you. Yeah.
yeah. And listen, the cemetery is full of untapped potential, and all I
Oh
can say is
gosh.
that listen, it's
You
true,
know,
it's
this
true.
is
You know how many
funny.
people died?
You have said something that completely brought me back to wait, 1997. I'm in a hospital, lying with the IV in my arm, and I worried all about what is going to happen with my business. How is my husband is going to handle it by himself? Should I hire that assistant? Oh my God, it's everything is going to fall apart because I was the business, right? I was doing everything. And the business friend of mine called the hospital, and you just said the same exact thing except a little different ending, because he was asking me how I was doing, and I was being prepped for surgery. That was my second back surgery. And he said, so the cemeteries are full of irreplaceable people.
Wow.
And I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
shit.
Wow.
Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much. That's
Yeah.
absolutely true, because everything wait. Everything could wait.
Everything.
Nothing is more important than your health. And you just said it and it just brought me back like smack. It's so funny.
And the thing is, Vera, and you know what's crazy with this friend of mine that I told you, right as he was getting diagnosed, and I've been telling him for years, listen, you got to take time, you got to start living your life, you got to travel, you have to do things. So at that, you know, 11th hour, he's telling me, you know what, did you finish your pilot's license? Because I'm just going to rent a plane and we're going to go and we're going to travel and I'm going to meet you wherever you are, and I'm going to let my son take over the business, and I'm going to, all this stuff, and it doesn't matter, and I'm just going to start living my life. And you know what, he didn't last not 6 weeks from diagnosis. And what I say is that what hurts me is that what we regret at the end is not the things that we did, that, oh my God, I can't believe I did this to this person,
right.
It's what we didn't do.
Yeah.
So my call to action for everyone listening is that while we don't want to live in urgent mode, life does require a sense of urgency.
Yes.
We need to get to whatever we're going to do, because we don't know when is. And not to be gloom and doomy, like I said, I plan to live to be 100, but you know what, I die happy if I die right now, because I've done everything. Not that I don't have a bucket.
You don't
and
regret
and yeah,
anything. That's true.
and just remember that you're a masterpiece, and you deserve to live your life the way that you want to live your life, the way that you envision it, regardless of who around you likes it or not. You know what you want, you know what you desire. Those desires were planted in you by God, the universe, whatever your higher power is, for you to be able to fulfill it, not for you to die without regretting that you didn't do it. So
well, if anybody was inspired by Berta today, and I don't believe there is a human being in the world that wouldn't be, how do people get in touch with you the best?
So easiest thing is Berta Medina Garcia. I believe it's still on LinkedIn, or on Facebook, Berta Medina, or Dreamers Succeed on Facebook. Super easy. It's Coach Berta on Instagram, but I play a lot in Facebook and LinkedIn. And I would love to hear from you guys. Just again, if there's anything that I can do, love that we would have a mutual connection with Vera, because every time I connect with someone of hers, the first 30 minutes or so, we're just talking about how amazing she is. So again, I love that you're doing
for me.
I love that you're doing this, Vera.
Berta is the master of introductions, and I had whenever first I started, that was the first thing that totally amazed me about you, that you sat down and you just introduced me to so many valuable people that became friends and connections. And that's what all the social networking is all about, because that's what we are supposed to do. We connect with people that we can help, or we can get introduced to somebody else, or they know somebody that may need just what we have. So it's the social media time when we can take it outside and connect together as a people. And if you are gonna be blessed to meet Berta in person, I envy you right now, because she has no time.
I love you, girl. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm so happy that you're doing this, Vera.
Thank you. And I so appreciate the time. That was really fantastic episode. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Love you, girl.
And I will absolutely, in the show notes, there'll be all the connection information to Berta if you feel compelled to get out, reach out to her. Okay. Thank you so much. Love you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And I can't hear reactions to this episode.
Bye.
Bye-bye.